Thanks very much and good morning. I know there are still a few people out there having a cup of tea or coffee, but I'll go ahead. John's already started by putting his hand up, so I know it's going to be a lively session and interaction with particularly John. I've known John for quite a number of years, actually. He lectured me when I was a student at the vet college, and then I seemed to follow him around the world, going to North Carolina and Australia and various places, so I bump into him a bit too frequently for my liking. And we don't always see eye to eye, so I'm expecting John to chip in as we go through. Before I start, I would just like to reiterate my thanks to everybody here who've made my daughter and I feel so welcome. We've had an absolutely fabulous time. The conference here has been superb. I've thoroughly enjoyed all the speakers. I've learnt a lot, and it's been a great experience for us. So thank you very much indeed. What I'll do today, and I'm quite flexible if people want me to talk a little bit more about certain things or talk a little bit less, do interact and shout out and say, move on, we're bored, or tell us a bit more about that. Quite happy for that. What I will do is I'll just go through a little bit about the pig industry, some of the facts and figures, talk a little bit about our projects that we've got ongoing at AHDB, and then move on to some of the issues within the UK, African swine fever being one of the major talking points at the moment. I took this screenshot from Pig World, which came out yesterday. Further to my presentation yesterday, the UK government have actually launched a campaign at our borders. So if I'd come in to Cairns a day later, I'd probably not put up a picture of the cricket. I'd have put up a picture of ASF control coming in through Heathrow. So they have launched a campaign, but also further cases of ASF in China. So that was just from today. I showed a map of the UK or of England yesterday, and this is just to show where our major pig rearing areas of England are. So this is Yorkshire, East Anglia. The difference here is that this is quite sandy soil, it's well draining, so it's very good for outdoor pig production. So the majority of our outdoor pig production will be here. We do have a little bit around Oxfordshire and in the southwest. And then in Yorkshire, majority would be indoor reared. The southwest around here is where we have a lot of our small-scale producers. We have approximately 30,000 holdings in the UK. 12,000 of those are commercial. So we have a huge number of non-commercial holdings. It's actually a legal requirement to register a single pig. So we know that we have at least 18,000 small-scale producers. These might be 1 to kind of 20 pigs. And they're concentrated really in this area. And it's interesting that this is the area where the major wild boar population is. So our small-scale producers who are hobby farmers are commingling with our wild boar, which is actually a concern for us. Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah, sorry, can you touch on the passport system you have in place for moving pigs? You guys still...
On the movement system? Yeah, so we have legislation in place that all pig movements have to be pre-registered. So if you're going to move pigs to another farm or you're going to move them to an abattoir, you have to click onto the pig hub that I showed you yesterday. AHDB hold that for the government, for DEFRA. It's actually a DEFRA requirement, but we hold it for them and we operate that. So the staff that operate our electronic medicines book and our all that, and they help producers. They also do the movements. So if you've got a problem moving pigs, they can help you with that license. So if you actually own a pig, you are supposed to hold it on a registered premise. We know that not all small-scale pig producers do that because there's some ignorance around that. Even within the veterinary profession, there will be some vets who wouldn't know, and that is a concern to us. So we know that we have 18,000 small-scale producers. We've probably got double that. And that is a worry, because in terms of disease outbreak, we just don't know where these individual pigs are. So, as I said, we have, gone backwards. We have quite a consolidated industry. We have 20 companies that would account for over 50% of the breeding herd. And breaking that down further, we've probably got 4 or 5 big producers that would account for about 15 or 20% of the breeding herd. Some figures, these are slightly outdated, and I've got a screenshot on the next slide that shows some figures that I picked up this morning. We've just been migrating our website at AHDB, and I hadn't actually picked up on our new one. I think it's only just gone live, but it's worth looking at. But John said this morning that we have a third of our pigs outdoors. I would say it's close to 45% of our breeding herd are outdoors. And in terms of how they're finished, we have very few, probably about 3% of pigs are reared outdoor to finish. Majority would be on straw. We reckon that's about 60% from the recent work that we've done, with 40% would be finished on slats. Now, I know that 40 and 62% don't add up, but there are some kind of mixed, and it depends on where you look. Bore studs, yeah. Sorry? I think there are 5 main ones. Is that right, John? John might know better than me. 7 altogether, but 5 would do the majority of the... No, they can. Yeah, they can. Yeah. I keep looking down at John, who's going, yeah, no. So this is the screenshot that I took from our AHDB website this morning. You can see here pigs weaned per sow per year. Our top 10% of producers are currently rearing about 31 pigs per sow per year, and the average at 25.4, which is quite high. Just some typical pictures of our outdoor pig units. You always see them like this because it's nice and sunny and dry. It doesn't always look like that in the UK. Probably does at the moment. This would be a typical outdoor rearing shed on straw. More commonly, you see pigs up to their bellies in mud. It's not an easy life for the stockman to rear outdoor pigs. It's quite tough, and I did actually spend a whole year working as a stockman on an outdoor pig unit before I went to vet college, so I know how tough it is. I didn't last it. I went to vet college, took the easy route. This just shows the trend of the number of pigs weaned per sow per year on a timeline. So you can see back in 2010, we were about 22, 23 pigs. And we've shown this really quite remarkable increase. And 31st of March 2019, we're up at 27.5 pigs, and that's the average. So that's actually that's changed our industry quite a lot. It's given our stockmen quite a tough job to be able to rear that number of pigs. Yeah. Probably both. But it would be both, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so sites like this are not uncommon. And actually, I was talking to a producer the other day who said, do you know, I've just had my stockman on the phone. We've just had a litter of 28 pigs. So it's quite a tough job. But the genetics isn't all great, I don't think. And John's might argue with me here. But what we see is, I took a career break. I went into academia for about 10 years, didn't get onto pig farms very much at all. And the change coming out onto pig farms is that our pigs have changed in nature. They are so much more aggressive. You can't go into a pen with our pigs without getting really badly bitten. It's it is quite remarkable, and I don't know whether John's seen similar, but I think that's one of the downsides of having the increased pig side, because I think the breeding companies have focused on numbers of pigs rather than on the temperament of the sows. And this is causing significant problems in the UK in terms of aggression, and we do have problems. And I think that in the next few years, trying to sort out our aggression problems is going to be key. We don't castrate in the UK. Red Tractor don't allow the use of Improvac or GnRH vaccination. So we have entire males. We're growing them faster, so we're growing them to slightly heavier weights. And we've actually seen outbreaks of aggression where pigs are killing each other in pigs as young as, well, pre-weaning. So aggression is getting to be quite an issue, and I think that's one that we really need to keep an eye on in the future. Yes, John? Particularly if we're going to be banning tail docking, and I will come on to tail docking in the end, because that is one of the big things for us. I'll just whiz through some of the AHDB projects that we have: the Pig Health Scheme, Significant Diseases Charter, Real Welfare, and some of the work that we've been doing on water. The Pig Health Scheme, and we heard David Hamilton talk this morning about the schemes that you have in Australia, and I think the Pig Health Scheme is very similar to your, not the one that he was talking about, the other one, I forget what it's called. So we have trained assessors going into English abattoirs. There are 11 of them in England that we go into, and they do their assessments, and I'm assuming that it's fairly similar to the way that you do it. The membership is free to all producers. All they have to do is sign up, and we've had quite a launch on this, and we've got the majority of finisher producers signed up to the scheme, so they value it. The conditions assessed are in this diagram here, so enzootic pneumonia-like lesions. These are the lung conditions: pneumonia, pleuritis, abscesses, pyemia, viral-like lesions. We look at the heart for pericarditis, the liver for milk spot, peritonitis and hepatic scarring, a bit of discussion around the use of that. And then we look at tails and skins, so tail-bitten pigs and papular dermatitis. The producers sign up. You'll have seen this yesterday on the Pig Hub. This is actually just for the previous question. This is where the producers would look at their pig movements. So this is the legal part of it: set up a move, confirm a move, cancel a move, report an import move, report a show purchase move, movement archive. And there's a helpline, which you can't see here, I've cut it off, but actually there's a helpline for that bureau service. So if a producer wants any help, they just phone up during working hours. But going back, this is the new Pig Health Scheme that we've relaunched earlier this year, and this is where the producers can click on to get their results. The producers will receive an individual batch report, but they'll also receive unit comparison reports, so comparing themselves with other units, and they'll also get a time comparison so they can see trends in their health status as they go by. This is the new look report which we've put out, and obviously you're not going to be able to read it all, but we've made it quite user-friendly, we think. We've taken quite a lot of feedback on this, and the producers seem to like it. Have this red, sort of amber-green thing that you can see that the trend line is the farm score, and then the colours are the rest of the industry. So you can see where you are in relation to the rest of the industry quite easily. Benefits, obviously, for the members to allow them to monitor and inform the health status on their unit. But ultimately, we want to improve the health and welfare of pigs on individual units, but nationally. Vets also will use it to understand what's going on their farms and maybe, evaluate how the vaccination's going for enzootic pneumonia, things like that. So I guess very similar to the way that you would all use your system. And one of the areas that I'm keen to capitalise on in my time at AHDB, I've only been there for just over a year, but I think there's a huge potential here to link to our other databases like the medicines book. Just haven't had a chance to do that yet. The Pig Health Scheme hasn't all been plain sailing since I've been at AHDB. I was actually an assessor from the outset, so I would be part of the data collection in the abattoirs from 2004, and I stopped that in 2016 when the scheme moved to different providers. We, being a government organisation, we have to tender for our projects, put it out to the open market, and another organisation got that, and they came in. We had got data that showed that these are just the EP-like lesions. We've seen a bit of a decrease here, possibly due to PCV2 vaccination coming in, a number of other things, but fairly consistent. And then this is the trend line, and you'll see that this one goes back from 2006 to 2015. When the new providers came in, we suddenly got rid of EP. We also got rid of APP, we got rid of a number of other things. Now, I'm not saying that that the previous assessors were right and the new ones were wrong, but it was different. And what that meant was that the vets said, this is rubbish, we don't know what to do with it. And nobody used it, nobody valued it. So I went into AHDB, and the first thing I did was I stopped the scheme. I thought, I'm not spending levy payer money on a scheme that nobody values. And I thought it was going to be a quick fix, and 6 months later I'd have it back up and running. No, it's been well over a year. So it is now back up and running, and we are due our first results the end of July. So I have seen the report come into my inbox, and I just haven't had a chance to look at it. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the Significant Diseases Charter. Significant Diseases Charter was set up as an early warning system to notify producers who wanted to be notified of specific diseases. And the first one that we talked about, or that we put onto this, was swine dysentery. A few years ago, we had a national campaign to try and eradicate swine dysentery. We got down to about 6 known positive units in the UK. Unfortunately, this year, we've seen a bit of an explosion of it. We had hoped that the government would make it notifiable and force those 6 units out, or to depopulate and restock. The government weren't on board, and we've now got an explosion of it. I think the government are listening to us and would take a different course in the future, we hope. But it's quite sad that the industry almost got there, and just those 6 laggards, as I would have called them yesterday, wouldn't get on board. They'd come to all the meetings, they'd eat all the biscuits, drink the coffee, and go home and not do anything about it. And we couldn't do anything. And we've seen this year that swine dysentery is just spread. Yeah. It was considered important. It was considered that we could do something about it. We had regional control programs. We tried to tackle it on a regional basis, and it seemed to be working. You know, it was causing us a problem. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, in the UK, in 2016, we made PEDV a notifiable disease, but it was made notifiable with a difference. The government said, we're happy to make it notifiable, but we won't pay compensation and we won't do a culling policy. We'll make it notifiable so that the industry can identify where it is and take immediate action to put in biosecurity measures, because as you all know, PEDV, unlike African swine fever, spreads much more readily. AHDB, before my time, were nominated, I think, or volunteered, I'm not quite sure, to take on the role of looking at the outbreak of the first 5 cases. Whatever the first 5 cases are, there's no defined time interval between one farm breaking or what's the case. So that's been an area that I've been working on over the last year to try and get that sorted out. We followed the American system. We had a very good talk from Paul Sundberg at one of our Pig Veterinary Society meetings a year or so ago, where he talked about how they were looking at PEDV control in the States. And so we have set up a group of 6 relatively new graduates who are trained in epidemiological investigation. So we've had the APHA, our government organisation, train them on how they would do an an epidemiological investigation for a notifiable disease, and they are committed to going out and doing an epidemiological tracings exercise on the first 5 units. So AHDB pay those 6 vets a retainer. We've agreed to do it for the next 3 years. If we get PEDV, we've got trained people who can, at the drop of a hat, who know the pig industry, can go out. The next stage is that we want to get people with experience, more experienced vets, to sit in our control centre that we would have at AHDB, so that those vets out on the farm can phone up and they've got a kind of a mentor. But by putting our experienced vets out there, well, A, they're not going to be able to go out because they're much more likely to have been on farm. Biosecurity would dictate that you wouldn't send them out. But also, if they're on farm, they can only do that farm, whereas back at the control centre, we need to really ensure we've got efficient use of our resource. So we want to train up a couple of more senior vets to work with us in the event of a notifiable PEDV outbreak.
You've had PEDV in Europe for donkey's ages. I mean, it was first picked up there by the Belgians. I mean, why do you think you're going to get something different? Surely there's enough community floating around that continent to not against the
No, no, no. So, go on.
We've not had a case though. Yeah, we had cases in the 70s. Yeah. But in the last 20 years.
No, nothing. So we don't think that we would be protected.
It's not just underground.
No, we don't think it's there. So the benefits of signing up: this is a voluntary scheme. Producers sign up, and if there is a swine dysentery outbreak or a PEDV outbreak, they are obliged to notify us if they've got it on their farm. But also in return, they will get notification. They'll get an email straight out as soon as we get it notified that there's an outbreak of swine dysentery, and we give the postcode. We don't identify the farm, but we do give the outcode. And we've had to change the legislation for PEDV to allow us to do that. So that's been a good progress, but we're going to have a desktop exercise later this year. As you know, AHDB only covers England, and PEDV is unlikely to just cover England, so we want to work with our Scottish colleagues, Northern Irish colleagues, to do a desktop exercise where pigs move across the border. We also have a real welfare scheme which looks at pig welfare outcomes. This has been a bit of a bugbear for the industry. The industry really didn't want this. AHDB set it up, I think, in 2013. Industry never got on board with it. I think John would agree with that. Majority of vets just thought it was a complete waste of time. They didn't like it. It was a tick box exercise and didn't demonstrate anything at all. But AHDB have been running this scheme. It records a number of indicators of pig welfare, and it's been based on some work that came out of Bristol University on welfare outcomes, and we devised this protocol that is now incorporated into Red Tractor, and vets do have to do their assessment, and they do it 2 to 4 times a year depending on the type of production system. So if it's a batch and they only have 2 batches through in a year, they only do it twice, but otherwise they do it 4 times. And it's a requirement of Red Tractor. The measures that people look at are pigs that should be in a hospital pen, lameness, body marks, tail lesion, and enrichment use. Some of these are optional because the vet's subjected too much to it. Hospital pigs is a real nightmare because you've got a pen of lame pigs. The producer on the day of the Red Tractor visit will just go around with a chalk and write H on the pen, and that will mean that all pigs are in the hospital pen. So it's not great. So what I've been doing over the last year is trying to evaluate this. We've engaged with producers and vets a lot better. What is clear is that the government are saying that any money that comes back when we leave the EU, if we leave the EU, will be invested into public good areas. And they have publicly said that welfare, animal welfare, will be a public good. So there's a really good indication that any money that comes back, and at the moment pigs don't get any subsidy. So actually by the government saying that, pigs are actually, if we do leave EU, pigs are probably the one sector that stands to gain. If you're a sheep farmer or beef farmer in Wales, you're not quite so steady. But pigs could make gains. Welfare is going to be an issue that the government tackles. There's a huge pressure from the public on pig welfare. And so for me, the real welfare doesn't work at the moment. We're looking at how we can redo that. The pig producers are starting to come on board saying, actually, we need to measure this. And whilst real welfare is not great, it does give us some sort of measurement. And so we're looking at what we can do. So we're working really hard with the vets and with the industry to see how we can redo this. We do have a large set of data that's been collected. We've got some scientific publications out there, and we're trying to make sure that what we do is of much more value for the vets and producers. So I've just put this is all in your handouts. At AHDB, we've had a real focus on water, and I was delighted by the presentation by Hugo yesterday looking at water. I think we really underrate the importance of clean and available water. And the work that our team in the environment and buildings have been doing on the pigs has been fascinating. I would just wish I had, a couple of hours to show you. So they would go out and they do, water assessments on farm in terms of cleanliness and availability, and just showing how shocking it is. Even when producers say, no, I've got my water system right, they absolutely haven't. Looking at biofilm and build up on the ends of tubes and pipes. We've got a lot of fact sheets out there, and these are all freely available. You can use these in your presentations or whatever to your producers. Just acknowledge AHDB. We're absolutely happy for, spread the word, use what you want. Quite a lot out there. The website's been redesigned, so they're all much more easy to access, actually, and it links in with keywords. So if you type in with water, it'll link you into other things with water. Just some of the work that we've been doing. And, this is done after a producer said, yeah, I've cleaned my system, and actually that's right in the nipple of the drinker. So the pigs are literally drinking this. We've got cases where we've been onto farm and we've done a water cleansing and looked at bacterial counts, and actually things like salmonella have just gone. But you've got to get right into the nitty-gritty of the tubes and make sure that they're really clean. So I think it's really important. This is two of our guys taking some water samples from systems that are supposed to be clean, and I think Hugo would recognise that. This is a video that one of our producers took. So they had a bit of a problem with their unit. They'd cleaned it all out, and then they found that one of their pipes was blocked. So they sorry, do that again. Sorry, I've got my So this is putting high pressure water through, and that was a clean system. So actually, expecting your pigs to drink that, I'll just play it again, cut pipe, where's the blockage? No surprise that you've got disease challenge with that. And that was on a clean system. Where's that down? Okay. So just some of the work that we're doing at AHDB. I'll move on to some of the health and welfare issues in the UK. The health things that really keep us awake at night. ASF and PEDV, and we've talked a lot about those, or talked a lot about ASF, PEDV. I think we're taking our foot off the pedal in the UK. It's still a risk, but we're so focused on ASF, but I put it there because I like to keep thinking about it, or not like to keep thinking about it, but I think we ought to. Swine dysentery. Swine dysentery is a really interesting one. As I said, we've had significant problems in the last 6 months with this. We actually had the launch of our biennial report, which Mark talked about yesterday. We did that at the Yorkshire Show, the Great Yorkshire Show, and I was quite keen that we did it at an agricultural event, and we went up there, and the Great Yorkshire Show had decided that they were going to ban all pigs. And they banned all pigs because the week before at the Norfolk Show, there was a pig that had been taken there by its owner to show it, and it was then supposedly going on to the Great Yorkshire Show. Another small-scale producer who also showed pigs looked at this pig and said, actually, it's got mucoid diarrhea. I don't think it's very well. The vet in charge at that show was an equine vet and said, oh, I don't think it's a problem, it'll be all right. But the owner had actually given it a jab of Tylan in the morning to prevent what they called as transit-induced stress diarrhea, which otherwise known as swine dysentery, I think. And this apparently is normal. It's normal for show pigs. And what we've realised is that the showing community have got low levels or high levels, they've got levels, certainly levels of swine dysentery that's going unnoticed, but it's not particularly pathogenic, so it's not causing dysentery, it's just causing a bit of transport-induced mucoid diarrhea. But these pigs go round the country, they go all around the country throughout the summer, and they will have spread it widely now, and that's been a huge concern for us. The showing community, when we asked them to sign up to the Significant Diseases Charter, I said, well, I don't like to, because if I sign up and I say that I've got swine dysentery, nobody's going to buy my pigs. And so it's caused us a real problem, and it's now rearing its head in our commercial section as well. And I think the day I came, we had one report, but the previous few weeks we've had about 6. I know that there are other cases where producers aren't signed up to the Significant Diseases Charter, so we know there are a lot more, and probably more than we know. So whether or not we'll be able to get it under control again, I'm really not too sure. PRRS is probably the one disease that causes the most loss on pig units in the UK. It's widespread. We can't control it. We don't have the US type, so we only have the slightly lower virulent strains, but it's still causing us significant problems. The government decided that they had some money left over from a pot, and they offered the pig industry £3 million to come together to try and do something with PRRS, but it was time limited. So in great tradition, we all got together and we had a great workshop. We decided on a plan, and it's gone into a black hole. And that money, unless it's spent by the end of 2021, actually spent and finished, we will lose that. And so there's a little bit of unrest in the industry that this money is sitting there being, waiting to be used, but we can't get access to it. PCV2, we do live with that. We widely vaccinate, and we see occasional problems with it, but nothing untoward really. I think just that I'll come on to that one. I've put this group as sensitive. Anything new? We are sensitive to these things. China seem to look at the UK, and anytime we publish anything on any disease, we have to send a delegation over to China to try and pacify them, to say, actually, it's okay, this disease is around the world, it's not just the UK that's got it. The latest one was the hepatitis C. Our Public Health England put out a paper on hepatitis C, saying that it had been found in 10% of sausages or whatever. And China said, right, we're stopping importing from the UK. And for us, that's big bucks. That's £70 million a year, and they just stop it overnight. So Chief Veterinary Officer, along with a contingent from AHDB, some vets, they went over to China and said, actually, you don't need to worry. Hepatitis C is widespread. It's not just the UK that's got the issue. You don't need to ban our exports or imports. And luckily they solved it. But we're very twitchy about putting anything out there. So we're trying to increase the communication that we've got with our colleagues in the likes of Public Health England, who put this out as good science. And it is good science, but they do it without telling us. So it hits the headlines and we're going, whoa, what's happened here? And we're not prepared. So we do want to put the science out, but we just like to be a bit more prepared. We have had a couple of cases of atypical APPV. We had a PhD student who started up in Scotland with Jill Thompson and the likes, looking at APPV, and has spent the first year really frustrated that she's got no clinical material. And then there has been a fairly significant outbreak, so she's got lots of material there, so she's working on that. And I can put speakers in touch with that person if they want to. Salmonella, we control salmonella in the abattoir. It's been shown to be the most cost-effective way. The European Union did a cost-benefit analysis of controlling salmonella on farm and decided that it was much more cost-benefit, that there was greater cost-benefit to do it in the abattoir. That is causing us a little bit of concern where we're getting some crossover between poultry and pigs at the moment. And so we're looking at that. We also keep an eye on LA-MRSA, obviously antimicrobial resistance, and then PCV3. And I'll mention that in a minute, Ross, just bear with me. So our APHA, our government organisation, put out these quarterly reports on pig diseases. Susanna Williamson is a fantastic asset to the pig industry in the UK. She generates this, she leads the pig expert group, which meet quarterly, and we discuss all these diseases. And these are freely available. You can get these, and I've put the links in at the end of the presentation, but they're really worth looking at. And she will identify anything, but she's also very aware that what she puts here, the Chinese will pick up, so she's quite cautious about how she reports things, because we don't want to get into a problem with our exports again. But these are really informative, and I'd encourage you all to look at them. I've put this in slightly out of order. This is a screenshot from an Amazon video that appeared on our TVs over the last couple of months. And you can see this little boy sitting at the breakfast table, and he's feeding this pig a piece of toast from the table. And we are worried about that. We wrote to the Advertising Standards Agency, and they took this down with immediate effect. It was also being shown in cinemas. So there's still a huge amount of ignorance over it. Oh, actually, no, I don't know. It was Amazon. I don't know what they were advertising, but it was, so a big organisation, and the advertising agency said, no, you've got to take that down, which was a really good thing for us. They weren't advertising toast. So PCV3 has been reported in many countries. So I want to make that lecture gets it's not just the UK. We have had, we think, one case possibly in the UK where we had multisystemic inflammation in stillborn pigs. It was a single breeding unit, and PCV3 was detected. However, it's still not been determined whether that was causal or whether it was just there, but we have certainly identified PCV3 in the UK. And I don't really have any more information on that. As John alluded to earlier, tail biting and tail docking is probably the thing that is the biggest issue for us at the moment. At AHDB, we have a tail biting web hat, which is a risk assessment tool, which until I think this year had about one person log on to it and use it, and that was probably me. But the government have really upped the ante on tail docking and tail biting. They've got a couple of people in there who are really fixated on tail biting and tail docking. The European Union have put in legislation that we shouldn't be routinely tail docking, and if we want to tail dock on a farm, we need a derogation from a vet. And some of the vets have been possibly a little bit complacent. So there was one case that the government showed us where a vet had written a letter in 2003, and it said, I believe the pigs on this farm need to be tail docked. And that was their evidence. And actually that's not good enough for the government. And they keep putting that in our face and saying, you know, if you're going to do this, we're going to have to legislate. You need to be more responsible. So the WebHat tool looks at risks that you might get on your farm for tail biting, and then you can put together an action plan with your vet of how you might tackle it. As you know, tail biting is not a simple one cause and one solution. So really a long-term plan. If your buildings are not up to scratch, which a lot of them aren't in the UK, there's been a lack of investment in a lot of the buildings over the last couple of decades. It's not feasible to say, well, you need new buildings, therefore, you know, you've got to put new buildings up tomorrow and stop tail docking. So it is really working through an action plan with your vets. We've done quite a lot of work on spotting early signs. There's a lot of research going on at SRUC, looking for early signs of tail biting. They've been doing a lot of video analysis. So pigs that spend time with their tails down, that's an early indicator that you're going to get a tail biting outbreak, and maybe you could put some interventions in. We're working with some pig vets to look at possible interventions that may or may not work. We still don't know how to tackle a tail biting outbreak if it occurs. We have no best practice. We don't have any advice that we can give at the moment. Everybody seems to be doing different things. So we're working with some vets to try and work out what may or may not work. But there's certainly a lot of concern. We have our welfare codes, which were supposed to have been rewritten in January this year. They haven't been, and probably won't come out until January next year. But the government are likely to impose some restrictions on tail docking. At the moment, we reckon that we tail dock probably 70% of our pigs, maybe a few more, which is less than in Europe, in other countries like Denmark. But we've had some militant inspectors go around on farm and advocate really stupid things like put 1 litter of pigs through with undocked tails in a whole batch of docked pigs, and lo and behold, they all get bitten. But we are trying to work much more closely with our government, with the welfare team at the government, and obviously being part of government, we can't lobby, so I can't go in and lobby and say this is what you're doing. So what I'm saying here is what I believe as a vet. So I have to be very careful about what I can and I can't say to the government, but I'm trying to coordinate discussion groups. So we've actually established a tail docking and biting workshop that AHDB will fund, which pulls in the vets, the producers and the government, so that we can talk about it and they can understand some of the issues, because I think sometimes there's just a lack of understanding, so that's where we're playing a role. I'm maybe slightly early, but I know that we need to catch up. I would just like to thank my animal health and welfare team at AHDB. This covers all the sectors, so beef and lamb and dairy. This is Claire, who works on the welfare. Matthew and Jenny here are the database people, so they do the EMB, they do the movements, they do the real welfare scheme and the pig health scheme. They do all the databases that we have. Lauren Turner is our pork processing person. She has set up the pig health scheme again. And then we have Lauren Dimmock, who's sitting here, who does the significant diseases charter. So we don't have a huge team, but without them, Cheryl, can't see where Cheryl is now. This is Cheryl here. She's our coordinator and she keeps us all in order and does all our admin for us. So couldn't do any of the work that we do at AHDB without that team behind us. So I'd just like to thank them. And at the end of the talk, I would just like to thank Australia Pork Limited again for inviting me here. It has been great. I'm incredibly honoured to have been here. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you very, very much. And on behalf of my daughter as well, thank you very much for allowing her to join in with some of the activities. I've put some references and web pages. Please look at the AHDB website. If you want anything, I haven't put anything there, My email, my phone number's there. Please phone me up, please email me, and I'll be only too delighted. And if anybody wants to come over to the UK, I'll be really, really happy to host you over there. Thank you very much indeed.